Hey guys, Aaron Dorr here at the Missouri Firearms Coalition. We are live on my gun range today with gubernatorial candidate Bill Eigel, talking about everything from education, immigration, the radical left, the rhinos on the right, and of course, the Second Amendment. Stay tuned, guys. You're going to love it. Thanks a lot for being here, man. I appreciate you coming out.
Happy to be here. Always a pleasure.
You know, a lot of gun people think that politicians, even the good ones, just can't shoot, but we've been shooting for the last hour, and you shot that target. I think it was deader than Joe Biden was in the debate stage that night.
Well, you know, hopefully that woke him up. You know, we emptied about 300 rounds into the range behind us, so life is good.
So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. We're going to immigration, education, transgender issues. Of course, Second Amendment is going to be a big part of this. The first question I have, though, is just kind of a simple one. What time is it here in America?
It's time to fight. I mean, we have more government in this country right now, in every state of the union, than we've ever had before. We've got more of these crazy leftists that are buying into this woke agenda, that are doing everything they can to grab our guns, to disarm our communities, and to control us than we've ever had before. It's time to fight. We're going to show these guys no mercy and meet them wherever they're at, whatever they're doing. We're not going to let them take our guns. We're not going to let them take our rights. It's time to fight in America.
I think everyone, so we did a poll on our Facebook page a couple of days ago. We just asked MOFC members, Missouri Firearms, where are you guys at in this primary? You got 3 candidates. You know, everyone says they're pro-gun. You know, where are you guys at? And, you know, people in the comments section are saying over and over, it's like, it's not enough to be pro-gun. It's not enough to say, I support gun rights. We are under attack. Everyone can feel it. We're not that far apart in age. Everyone remembers what it was like a couple decades ago. I know what it was like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's just a war against freedom in ways that just having the right talking points is not enough anymore. We have to get loud.
Yeah, we have to, and if we don't, it's our future that's going to be on the line here. And let's be honest, these leftists up in D.C., they're not going to take any prisoners. No. They're not going to show us any mercy. They're not going to let any of our freedoms to exist beyond what they think is appropriate for us. They want to control us. They want us to do what they're telling us to do. We're not going to go for it. We're going to resist. We're going to fight back.
So you mentioned D.C. It's been a war for 4 years now with Joe Biden. Everyone knows this. I mean, it's just been nonstop every day in Congress. The most horrific gun control bills we've seen in our lifetime filed in Congress. Our members all know, gun owners today know what maybe a generation ago they didn't really verbalize, which was that it's not about hunting.
Yeah.
Gun rights is not about sports shooting, even though this is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But this is about stopping tyranny. It's about safeguarding we the people from, in some cases, our own government. And our founders knew that because that's why they put these God-given rights into the Constitution. What do you think Joe Biden's end game is? It's not just as simple as like making some small tweaks.
No, he wants to disarm us. Joe Biden, and he's being propped up by all these thousands of leftists that have gotten into the bureaucracies and the government in Washington, D.C. They want to disarm us. They do not want us to have the capacity to defend ourselves or push back on their future agendas. And I mean, we get a glimpse of these agendas all around us, right? Look at the COVID environment. Look at the attacks that we're seeing on our kids. This is the world that they want us to live in. They know that we don't want to live in that world, so they're trying to take away our best tools that we have at our disposal to defend ourselves. The Second Amendment was always about defending ourselves from government that's gotten out of control. And like I said, we've never had more government than we have in this country right now. And I hate to say this, but it's not just the Democrats. It's a lot of Republicans.
I was going to ask you that because what we saw in D.C. 2 summers ago was all the Rhino Brigade got together and gave Biden the votes he had to have to pass the Bipartisan Communities Safer Act. I've seen no communities that are safer over the last 4 years with this president, but it didn't happen unless he had Republican crossover votes from the rhinos who stabbed gun owners in the back.
Yeah, and I hate to say this, it's happening in Missouri too.
Yes, it is.
You know, I have sponsored legislation on the Second Amendment. We were trying to get rid of these so-called red flag gun laws.
I'm going to ask you about that, yeah.
And it was when that bill, it actually died in a vote in committee.
That's right.
It didn't die because of Democrat votes. It died because Republicans refused to show up and support it or directly voted against it. So we have problems in our own party that we've got to address because these spineless rhinos down in Jefferson City are exactly what's wrong with our government. And if we let them win the day on August 6th or in November, we're going to lose our rights.
So getting more Missouri focused now when it comes to guns. So, I mean, we have room for improvement here still. We have to enhance stand your ground law. We got gun-free zones that the rhinos continue to keep in practice, and people get killed every other day the way it seems in St. Louis or KC because of that. But in general, we have solid gun laws because people like you have been there at the forefront with the Missouri Firearms Coalition and others to push for gun rights. When we look forward, our members right now, their big concern, even above the Democrats here in Missouri and the rhinos, is federal government, federal overreach. So looking forward, we're June right now, so looking forward 6-7 months from now, Governor Eigel is in the White House, let's just start with governor's mansion, and we still, God forbid, have Joe Biden in the White House. Right. And this federal tyranny keeps coming against our gun rights. What does an Eigel administration do to safeguard gun rights from federal overreach?
Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to continue to protect probably the best bill that I got a chance to vote for during my time in the state Senate. That's the Second Amendment Preservation Act. That's the bill that says that none of the authorities within the state of Missouri are going to cooperate with any federal authority that tries to come into our borders and do any kind of gun grabbing or infringement on the Second Amendment. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And I think we're going to have a good Attorney General working with me that's going to make sure that the Second Amendment is protected. The Second Amendment Preservation Act continues to be the law of the land. That's number one. Number two, there's some legislative things that we can still do. We've got to get rid of these gun-free zones because the only people complying with gun-free zones are lawful citizens that weren't breaking the law in the first place. Criminals don't follow the law. That's what makes them criminals. So we're going to get rid of these gun-free zones, especially, some of the worst crime-ridden areas of our state. St. Louis City still actually have gun-free zones where people can't protect themselves and take their own personal protection into their own hands. We're going to push to make those history in the state of Missouri. But what about red flag laws? I know that the leftists like Mayor Tashara Jones down in St. Louis, if given half an opportunity, will create red flag databases that'll be used to take the guns, to take firearms from law-abiding citizens, and we're going to make that illegal in the state of Missouri for her to do that. So there's more protections that we can do, but really the fact that Missouri has kind of been a leader on the Second Amendment just means that we have a greater responsibility to defend it and set the tone for other states that are going to look to us for guidance. That's exactly where I see Missouri being at the forefront of the 50 states. We're going to lead this country.
You're right about that. I mean, Missouri was the first state after a 5-year gap after Trayvon Martin's situation in Florida to pass stand your ground law, and then a flood of states passed it. The first state to pass SAPA, and now it's being pushed across the country. So definitely a leader in the fight for gun rights. I want to ask you again about the federal threats here. Last week, Department of Homeland Security, the people who have led 11 million foreign nationals, at least by their own numbers, flooded into our country, came out and said to the White House in a leaked briefing document that the real threat in America for domestic terrorism comes from folks who are religious, or veterans, or support President Trump. So I don't know about you, but
pretty much talking about me. I think
it's you. It's pretty much everybody who's involved with the Missouri Firearms Coalition. This is our own government in many ways now at the federal level is turning on we the people. How do we fight back against that?
First of all, everywhere we can. And I'll tell you, one of the big things that we're going to do in this state, we're going to stop taking all this federal money that's coming with a lot of these mandates in the first place. About 50% of our budget is coming from the federal government. And that is a situation that has been allowed to occur because of Republicans down in Jefferson City. You've got Mike Parson down there. You've got Lincoln Huff down there. These guys have continued, they have continued to make government bigger and bigger. And now it's out of control. And that's what's opening the door to the COVID environment. That's what's opening the door to all these other regulations that the federal government wants to put down on us. And if we don't turn this around, if we don't on August 6th turn this around and start electing statewide leaders that are going to take it seriously to start fighting the federal government, then they're going to come for our guns. And when they've got those, they're going to expect us to live as slaves relative to these masters over in Washington, D.C. That's not the Missouri I'm talking about. We're going to fight back.
Exactly. A lot of our members, a lot of gun voters across the country, but here in Missouri, especially at election time, they get suspicious. They get suspicious. Everyone says they're pro-gun in a primary. Heck, in a general, most people in Missouri have to say, I'm pro-gun. So talk to that gun owner who is saying, okay, so Bill Eigel is pro-gun because he's in a primary right now. Get past the rhetoric. What have you done yourself? You've been there for 8 years in the Senate. You've had a front row seat to the fight for freedom. What have you personally done to help safeguard or expand freedom for gun owners here in Missouri?
Well, as it relates to all the candidates in this gubernatorial election, I'm the only guy that actually stood up and voted and fought to get the Second Amendment Preservation Act passed in the first place. I'm the only guy amongst all the candidates for governor that actually filed the legislation to make these red flag laws illegal in the state of Missouri. I'm the only guy that's offered amendments on the Senate floor to other law enforcement related bills to get rid of these gun-free zones that we've got in some of the urban areas of our city. So when we had a lot of the left woke crazies that were calling me names and coming after me and attacking me in public, we just responded by continuing to file the right legislation that's going to protect the gun owners of this state. So I'm proud to do it, and you can expect more of the same when I'm in the governor's mansion.
And I don't want to talk too fast over those talking points. I mean, Second Amendment Preservation Act, SAPA, it's the biggest accomplishment for any red state when it comes to the fight for gun rights anywhere in at least the last decade. So under this president, what we're saying with SAPA is that you can't come into Missouri, take our cops that Missouri taxpayers pay for. So we're supposed to enforce Missouri laws that you guys pass in the General Assembly. You can't take our cops and enforce federal gun control laws. That's what it says. And so there's no surprise. We've been in court for a long time because Biden hates the idea of states asserting that authority. I remember that floor action. That was the last day of session 2021. And we had about a 7-hour Democratic filibuster, and there was 3 or 4 guys on the floor nonstop who were fighting to break that.
Right.
You were definitely there. And then when it comes to red flags, I think everyone knows what a red flag law is. It says that you're going to take away someone's guns by a court order before someone's been even arrested, let alone convicted of anything. And so SB 10 was one of your bills that you filed for the Missouri Firearms Coalition, which would make it illegal. And we did so by saying you have to have a conviction, a disqualifying conviction in court, which presupposes due process, right? And then if you're found guilty of certain crimes, that's one thing, but it's going to end the idea. And as you mentioned a minute ago, it wasn't just the Democrats who voted no on that in committee.
When it came to the General Laws Committee last year, and you know, I am continually disappointed by these weak-kneed Republicans down in Jefferson City, but even this was pretty extraordinary. That in the General Laws Committee, we actually had 2 Republican state senators that refused to support the red flag prohibition. One was Senator Lincoln Huff.
That's right.
I mean, he's running to be our lieutenant governor.
That's
so
right.
When we talk about fighting on August 6th, keep in mind that it's not just voting for the right guys, it's not voting for the wrong guys. So Lincoln Huff is probably one of the most liberal Republican senators we've ever had in our state. And the other one was, of course, Senator Mike Searpoy, who refused to even show up for the hearing because he was afraid to take that vote. The bill fails in committee and it never makes it to the Senate floor. A supermajority of Republicans, and we can't get a prohibition against
even out of committee.
Out of committee, we can't get it out of committee. So that's the problem. So yeah, we've done a lot of good things in the state of Missouri because we've had the Freedom Caucus or the Conservative Caucus out there leading that fight. I remember the days when Congressman Eric Burleson was out there helping us fight that fight on the Senate floor. But we've got to be vigilant. We have a status quo of leftists, of big government types trying to take over in Jefferson City on August 6th. And if they're successful, all of our rights are going to be in danger.
I want to ask about immigration for a few minutes. Immigration is definitely tied to the Second Amendment because, again, by Biden's own numbers, so you know it's probably BS.
Right.
By Biden's own numbers, 11 million foreign nationals have come across the border under his tenure. 11 million. I mean, it's more than the population I saw of. There's 36 states in the country that have less than 11 million people in them. That's how much we're talking about here. We see the news every day, you know, rapes, murders, robberies carried out by illegal aliens, foreign nationals, unvetted people. What the heck is Biden doing? There's lots of different theories on this. Why is Biden opening up our country to the worst people in society from other countries?
Well, you know, who knows what's going on inside the mind of Joe Biden, but I'll tell you what the effect of his policies of allowing an invasion to occur in this country are pretty clear, and that's what it is. It's an invasion of this country. We've opened up our southern border. We are estimated to have right now in the state of Missouri over 70,000 illegal immigrants. The cost that is placing on the taxpayers of the state, not to mention the criminal cost that we're seeing in our urban areas, is actually more than the value of every personal property tax bill that we pay in this state. So when I'm out there saying we can get rid of personal property tax, imagine in Missouri where we get rid of the illegals in our state because I'm the only one that said that we're going to detain and deport every single one of them, and then we're going to use those savings to get rid of personal property tax. So this is a reminder for every single person that values their God-given rights that whether it's Joe Biden or anybody else up there, there are a lot of people in Washington, D.C., and way too many in Jefferson City that don't care one lick about defending the rights of the citizens in this state. When I'm the governor of this state under an Eigel administration, the defense of our rights is going to be the top priority of my administration, and I will meet these leftists from Washington, D.C. wherever, whenever they want to try to come into our state, and we're going to turn them back.
So to be clear, under your administration, they're going to be deported. Not just talking lies, not just rhetoric. You're going to kick them the heck out of Missouri.
We're not just saying close the border, which is like the easiest thing for any Republican to say.
Exactly.
We're going to actually, in the borders of this state, I'm going to declare an invasion under Article 4 of the Missouri Constitution, which will empower the National Guard, every sheriff in this state, and the Highway Patrol to implement my policy of detain and deporting every single one of the 70,000 illegal immigrants that are here. I'm the only guy saying it, so if you want to see an end to illegal immigration in the state of Missouri, I'm really the only choice.
When it comes to immigration, illegal immigration, foreign nationals, this invasion, the Missouri Constitution is pretty clear. every citizen, all citizens' rights to keep and bear arms shall not be questioned.
Right.
Key word there is citizens. Now, that's what the Constitution says. State code is a little bit ambiguous about that. We intend to change that. We're going to have a bill next session to freaking make it clear that illegals do not have access to these same tools of self-defense. Does an Eigel administration sign that bill into law?
We sign that bill every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So, I mean, and actually the real question for an administration is if the legislature doesn't get their act together in the regular session and get these protections done, how about an Eigel administration that's going to call that legislature into a special session, and they can sit in Jefferson City until Christmas time if they need to protect the rights of the citizens.
Education, hot topic. It's one of the biggest items in the budget every year. It's the biggest one, right? I believe, in the budget, or one of the biggest ones in the budget every year.
Yep.
It's a lot of gun owners, older gun owners, people who are parents, grandparents are terrified, frankly, right now. We're seeing schools that are teaching our kids that our founders were racists, capitalism is evil, the Second Amendment should be repealed. We're all guilty of some sort of privilege. Johnny's really Susie, and Susie is really Johnny. And when they come out at the end of their time in these government schools, very few of them are voting for freedom. People's kids and grandkids' minds are being, in some cases, poisoned against the very culture, the fabric of Missouri. What does the Eigel administration do to prevent or to deal with this attack on our kids? Because they're too vulnerable to decide at the age of 7 that they're being fed a line of Marxist tyranny.
Yeah, when my kids were young, I didn't let them determine what their bedtime was. And now we've got these leftists out there. Right, we've got these leftists out here saying that they can change what God himself has ordained with man and woman. So this is just crazy. Where it's coming from is the same place where all the attacks on our rights are coming from. It's coming from Washington, D.C. These leftists in Washington, D.C. are pushing this woke, crazy agenda of CRT, DEI, this insane transgender ideology down with dollars. They're using dollars and mandates from D.C., pushing it down to Jefferson City, and then pushing it out to our public schools. An Eigel administration, I've said this repeatedly, I'm going to line out every single one of those federal dollars coming from the Federal Department of Education, and we're going to dismantle the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that has become one of the worst bureaucracies down in Jefferson City. And actually getting rid of all these bureaucracies is a great thing for liberty, because that's where a lot of our liberty and our freedoms are actually going to die in Jefferson City right now, and all these bureaucracies. But we're going to free up our local public schools to teach our kids reading, writing, and arithmetic like they never should have gotten away from doing. And it's one more step for Missouri to get away from the federal government. And, these ideologies just provide a peak of what Washington, D.C. has in mind for the state of Missouri.
You're right.
And if we don't have folks that are aggressive and bold and are willing to make the status quo uncomfortable like I am, out there leading the fight against it, then we've got a tough day coming in the state of Missouri. We're going to stop all that. We're going to forestall all that, and I can tell you, we're going to push back on this stuff. That's going to be out of the budget in my first year of being in office.
It's got to happen. I mean, homeschooling in Missouri has doubled. In the since COVID, homeschooling has now doubled from 5 to 10%. I mean, people are at their wits' end with liberal ideology, education, just destroying their kids' future. It's got to get dealt with. Speaking of this whole education thing, it feeds into the transgender question. A lot of people have been watching just with horror in their eyes over the last couple of years as we keep seeing these schools and think tanks and Soros groups that are pushing this. What is going to happen? How are we going to deal with this problem going forward?
Yeah, so this transgender ideology is one of the most disturbing aspects of the woke leftists. This idea that we can mutilate children, that we can physically maim them for a lifetime of medicalization. This is just a further attack on the American child, on the American family. We're not only going to get this stuff out of our schools by defunding all these federal dollars that are forcing it into our schools in the first place. I got to tell you, when we're seeing other attacks on our kids too. What about these drag queen shows that are happening all over the state that children are being led into? Like, you know what, Aaron? We don't need another law. We don't need another law. We don't need another rule in place saying that that's not okay. It's already against the law to expose these children to this kind of sexualized material. We need some action. I can tell you, when I'm the governor of this state, the next time we have a drag queen show where children are being exposed to this highly sexualized material, we're not passing another law. I'm sending in the highway patrol. We're arresting everybody in the whole place. This is ridiculous. And when it's about time, my real question is, why isn't Mike Parson doing this right now? Where are the champions in Jefferson City that were supposed to be protecting us from this kind kind of nonsense. And how did we ever let ourselves as a state allow for children to be maimed and mutilated by these medical institutions that are profiting millions of dollars from it? That is going to stop. We've already stopped it with some legislation, but we're going to need a governor that's going to go after these crazies that are trying to go after our kids wherever and whenever they pop up.
Election integrity. Everyone's talking about it. Gun owners are terrified about not terrified. They're angry, frankly.
Yeah.
Well, what the heck? How do we know who we can trust? How do we know that our vote is properly being protected and stewarded? What do you do in your administration to safeguard election integrity?
Well, so the Missouri Senate's actually already taken advantage of what I refer to as low-hanging fruit on some of the election integrity issues. We require a photo ID. The legislature did that. We got that done. That was one of the few victories we did have. Don't believe the other gubernatorial candidates saying they did that. That was a bill I voted for. We got paper ballots put in place in every county and every precinct in the state. But one of the things one of the big things that separates me from my opponents in this gubernatorial election, I'm the only guy ready to get rid of every one of these Joe Biden voting machines. If we don't get rid of the machines, all of which have vulnerabilities to connect to the internet, to be hacked into, to potentially change the vote of what we're putting into the system, then we're never really going to have a secure election. So I want to get rid of every one of these machines and go back to the hand counting of ballots that worked for this state for more than 100 years. That's what integrity in election looks like.
You look back over the last 4 years, it's been a dark time with this madman in the White House. Been a dark time. A lot of areas we've just seen defeat. But when it comes to gun rights, Joe Biden has been the best person, frankly, to help us propel gun rights forward. Red states all across America have passed constitutional carry, stand your ground law. Of course, Missouri and SEPA was the big get here in Missouri. These are big wins, and in some ways, the gun space is the only space where we're seeing a lot of good wins. We're seeing it at the state level. We're seeing the Supreme Court, where Clarence Thomas just keeps giving body shots to the gun control agenda. How do we keep these wins coming, both here in Missouri or even nationally, when it comes to gun rights?
By electing a leader at the top of the state that's going to lead on this type of policy. If you like seeing these kind of big red wins go on, if you like seeing if you like seeing Missouri lead the way in defending our gun rights, well, I need your vote on August 6th. We're going to keep that going. In fact, look at what right now, even in this November, we see the abortionists come out to attack our pro-life values in our Constitution. You can bet that if they're successful there, next year they're going to be coming after our gun rights in our Constitution.
Never gonna quit.
We need a governor who's not just going to sit by when initiative petition reform fails in the Missouri Senate. We need a governor that's going to lead on policy, that's going to unite the Republican Party by calling on those Republicans to do the Republican things that they promised in campaign season. I'm that guy, and nobody has made the swamp more uncomfortable than I have over the past 8 years. If folks are interested in seeing those victories move forward, I need their vote on August 6th. Vote for me.
Think our gun barrels have cooled down and ready to shoot some more?
I'm ready to do it. Let's go.
Let's do it, man.
Thanks,
All right.
Aaron.